Hi everyone, I'm back again now to show you the next flower in my program for my channel. I hope you'll subscribe and don't forget to leave comments in the comments down below the screen, and now we'll get on with it. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I make my honeysuckle. So just show you that this is a finished one that I've done, and I'm here on my board. You'll see all the different kinds of cutters that you can use. These are quite botanically correct to the plastic ones, but I quite like this metal one, which is a bit more of a fluted edge, and as you'll see by the flowers that I've made here, it makes quite a nice frilly edge on it. But like a lot of flowers, there are lots of different varieties of different species of flowers, so it's up to you which you prefer. But while I will also show you how to make one if you haven't got cutters and how to do that. So we'll start off by getting our wires, and I've got some already cut here. This is a 28 gauge wire. You don't need a strong wire for this because these are going to be all wired onto another wire, so and there's going to be a lot of buds and flowers all in one sprig. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to add your stamens onto your wires, and if I can find where I put my stamen, there they are. The stamens I'm using for these are called micro stamens, which are absolutely tiny. I don't know whether you can see that on camera or not. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take three of the stems of the stamens, and for those that don't know, they all come double-ended, so you've got two ends. So if you're using one stamen, you can cut them in half and just use half of it, so they're quite economical to use. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use three of the strands together, fold them in half and put them together, and then get hold of one of them and pull that one up higher than the others, because that forms the pistil in the centre of the flower. Now if you look at a picture of a honeysuckle, or if you're lucky enough to have them growing in your garden, you'll see what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my Stemtex. Stemtex is the brand name of the florist tape that we use for this, because this is more suitable for what we do in Sugarcraft than some of the other tapes on the market. Start it off on your tape, and then get your wire in so that it goes just below the tape so it's not going to show, and then carry on and tape all the way down your wire. The reason for this is if you don't tape right down to the bottom, when you put the wire through the flower stem down through here, you're going to find that it can unravel and it can tear your paste. So it's better if you tape all the way down to the bottom, then you've got a bit more control on it. Don't need to bother opening these out too much. So I'm going to do another one, and the reason for that is because I'm going to show you two different ways of doing them. One using my cutter that I prefer, and I'm going to show you one without cutters. Right, so just pull one of them up. It doesn't matter if they're not all exactly level, because in nature not everything's perfect, you know, and you find that things can be a little bit higgledy-piggledy sometimes. So if you look at the flowers closely, you'll find that two flowers are never the same. You do get quite a lot of variation in them. I'm having a bit of difficulty getting this one started. Go on, there we are, got you. As I keep repeating myself, for those that haven't watched my videos before, if I make a mistake or anything like that, I don't stop and start again, because we all make mistakes, and I like to show the mistakes as well as the good parts, for the simple reason that it just proves that none of us are perfect and things do go wrong. Always done that in my classes when I'm teaching. Right, so we've got 2 of those there, so we can do 2 different kinds of flowers now. Just put that in there because I'm going to use that for a leaf. We're using the same wires for the leaves as we have for the flowers. Those are my leaf cutters there, but I'll come back to those when we start on the leaves. Right, we'll just get rid of those stamens out of the way. And so now, get my white paste. As with quite a few flowers that you've seen me do, I do start off with white with these, and then I dust them to the colour that I want. Sometimes it's easier doing that. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a very dark colour, then you probably might start off with a lighter shade of whatever colour you want to finish, like we do with leaves. I start off with a light green, and then the dusted to the colour that I want to get the effect. It's like painting, you need an undercoat sometimes, but with some of the flowers, because sometimes white parts are showing on them, I prefer to start with some of the flowers like this. So start off with a ball of paste, roll one end of it into a long cone like that. These have got quite a long back on, and this is what we call a Mexican hat, or in the case of this, a witch's hat. Get the bubble between your finger and your thumb and your first finger, and start working round it, just squashing it down to form the brim like that, and keep going until you've got it reasonably thin. We are going to roll this out when we get to it, and this is where you need the right tools to do it with. So I've already got some white fat on my board here, so onto your board, and the reason for that is because we don't want to move it around once you've got it on your board. And when I find my cell pin, whatever I've done with it, I've done it again. I thought I was organised when I started, but I've got some more here. These are cell pins. The ones that I use are you can buy them in a set where you get this one here with the smaller one, which we use instead of a cocktail stick because they do tend to break. I'm going to use the larger one out of the 2. And the reason why we need a small pin like this is because you need to get right up to the base of the centre of the hat and roll out. And if you're rolling pins too big, if you try to do it with that, it wouldn't work because you can't get right up under the base of there. And sometimes people don't always explain to you why we do these things, but you need to know there's a rhyme and reason for every tool that we use. And keep rolling out until you get it quite thin. And what you can do is check with whichever cutter it is you're using as to whether that will fit over there, because for a honeysuckle you want that part of the flower to fit over the cone. You also need enough length of your paste here so you can get this tail bit in as well. So if we just try the other ones, tried that, you see if you were using that one, then that would fit like that on it. You just need to make sure that you've got that far enough. The tail is a bit longer on this one than it is on that, so that wouldn't be long enough. I would have to turn it round to this part here. So pop that back on there, and then just give it a press round like that. Take the excess paste away, so you're now left with that. Right, so we'll just get rid of that for a minute. And this is where the cell pins come in handy as well, because they have a pointed end on them as well. We're going to use that part now. So if you get that between your finger and your first thumb, push the cell pin down into the middle, not too far, and just push against your finger like that. Now that opens up the centre and brings your petals up. So you've cupped it like that. When you've done that, then we go on to your silk veining tool, which again I've got here, and I've mislaid it, wherever I put it. Doing really well here, aren't I? Losing my tools. Must be underneath there somewhere. There it is. And I found the other cell pin that I was looking for. That's when I was doing my Blue Peter bit, when I moved them over there out of the way. Right, so again, keep the flower between your finger and your thumb, and then put the point of your silk veining tool in, and then just roll it backwards and forwards on each of those petals. And what we're doing is we're thinning it out. This is why we don't thin the edges with the ball tool or a dog bone tool like we do with other flowers, because this will thin your edges of your flowers. I should also point out as well, coming back to the stamens, that the stamens in the actual flower are not like the shop bought stamens, but I have done them for competition work, but they're a bit fiddly to do because they're more like a tea bag, but they're very, very fine. So for that, if you did want to do that, what I do is run a piece of cotton through some hair lacquer, a good strong hair lacquer, let it dry so it stiffens up, and then cut little tiny bits for the top part and then longer bits for the base part. I'm going to roll the tool over that long bit there. Just be very careful you don't break this off. Right, the next step is now, depending on which paste you're using as well, this is quite sticky so I don't use glue on it, but with some of the pastes you do need to put some glue on your wire at the top, otherwise it'll come out. But the paste I'm using, which is the Squire's Kitchen one, is quite sticky and you don't need to do that. But if you're using Renshaw's or anything like that, you will need to put glue on. Pull that down until the green part disappears into your paste, like that. And then roll between your two fingers down your wire, like this. Now I have come out of the side there, so I'm just going to, if that does happen, like I said, if things go wrong, I like to show people how to correct it. Just smooth your paste round your wire just to cover that up. There's always a way of correcting things rather than doing it again if you don't have to. And then roll it down so you've got a long back on the back of your flower. And bring those petals up, and then that one, just let that curl down so that goes down like that. Okay, then you can set that to dry. But what you need to do first of all, before you do that, get hold of it between your finger and your forethumb and pull it up like that, so you've got a curve on your flower like that. Then put that to dry. Now if you haven't got the cutters, what you will need for this is a pair of nail scissors. These are special Sugarcraft ones I've got. These are very expensive. They're about, well, they were about £8 I think when I bought them, but a pair of very small nail scissors will do, as long as you haven't used them for anything else. Start off again with your ball of paste, roll it into a cone. Like that. Now you can either use the end of your silk veining tool or the cell stick and push that into the centre. If you haven't got a cell stick, you could use a piece of thin doweling or something like that, something of similar sort of thickness to this, and then push it against your finger like that, just to open it up. Now I'm doing this without another tool that I sometimes use, for the simple reason that if you haven't got any tools, then you need to know how to do this. So if you look at that, that's got 5 on it, 5, 6. So we need 6 petals. So if you start off by cutting down into one, and I'm going to make small clips here, you'll see why in a bit, and then cut that into 3. So one smaller one and one longer one there, because that's going to be the tail, is that part, and then 2 smaller ones into there like that. Sorry if I'm going off camera, I do this sometimes and I forget when I'm watching. So once I've done that, then the longer one, which is this one here, which is going to be the tail. Now if you get that on your first finger and with your thumb stretch that out like that, so you've got your tail on it like that. depending on how long you want it to be. And then again, like we did with the rest, go back to this method, you rest it on your thumb and just roll backwards and forwards with your tool. Now what you can do before we get onto that is you can get a ball tool if you've got it, or something with a round end, and just pull it out a bit just to make those petals a little bit more round, like this, just to give them a little bit more shape. The petals are going to be a little bit deeper on this, but if you don't want them quite as deep, you can always do them a little bit shallower. It's your flower, you make it the way you want it to be. Just round those off like that. Then go back onto the silk veining tool and get your veining into it. You're basically widening your petals as well as doing this, as well as putting the shaping into it. And then onto your long one, like that. It's never going to be quite the same doing it this way, but it just shows that it can be done. So that goes down like that. And then get your wire, same as before, bit of glue on the top end of your wire just under your stamens, and then down into your funnel part. Bring it down until the green disappears. Then between your two forefingers just roll it. And roll it down to get quite a long back on it. There are one or two flowers that, particularly climbing flowers, that have got long backs on like this, like jasmine and stephanotis and things like that. They've got a long back like this, so you do this quite a lot. And you use the same Mexican hat method as well for starting those off, if you're using cutters, or this cut method. Then curl that back like that. I do prefer the one with the cutters because it is more botanically correct, but I mean, if you're doing these flowers for somebody else, they're not going to know the difference anyway, as long as they all look the same. Right, onto the buds. There's a lot of buds in these. In actual fact, in the head that I'm doing here, there's about 22, 23 buds in a head. So you need to make them all different sizes. I have got some here that I've done already. Some I've coloured and some I haven't. So you need all different sizes like that, starting from a small one like that up to these larger ones here which go on the outside. So I'm just going to pop that back over there. So I'm just going to do a fairly small one and a larger one, just to give you an idea. So if you just roll some balls of paste out and get your different sizes like that, and I want a 28 gauge wire. I just have to cut some more wires. Where are we? 28 there. I am using green wires for these. I know with a lot of flowers I've used white wires in the past, but you're not going to see the wire in the flower. I only use the white wires when you're actually putting it into the petal. Where's my scissors? There we are. Right, so we cut that in half. Now with these buds, what you can do is you can get 6 out of here because you don't need long wires on them. So we'll cut that into those two halves into 3 like that. Then start your ball of paste off again. Make sure you haven't got any cracks in it or anything before you do this, because you don't want those to show up in your buds. Get a wire ready, and then I'm just going to roll that into a longer piece like that, and then put the wire straight into it. If you're using the other non-sticky paste, as I say, put some glue on your wire first before you do this, otherwise it will come off. Get it up as far as you can. Don't matter if it comes past the end, because when we start rolling it's going to come past there. Look, that's disappeared now. And what I'm doing is I'm leaving like a bulb piece on the top there and rolling quite a long neck on like that, which is the back part of the flower. This is the bud part of the flower that will open. You could put markings into it if you wanted to, but I don't bother because nobody's going to look that closely. They look at the overall effect. And while you've got it just underneath the bulb, between your finger and your first thumb, just brush that over like that, and then with the other hand pull the wire up like that, so you've got that sort of shape on your wire. So it's a bit, think of a cobra. That's the way to look at it. Think of a cobra coming up ready to spit at you or bite you or whatever they're going to do. Not that you're going to get that close to a cobra, but that's basically the look that you want. So that would be the cobra's head and then the body of the cobra. Right, with the larger one I'm going to do that again. So I'm just going to run through the same steps, roll it into a longer piece like that, into a cone, get your wire up the centre of your paste. That's just come to the top there, and then below that top little bit there start rolling, and then just go down and roll the bottom bit so it narrows down. Now on the larger ones you can give a little bit more shaping on into them. So what we're aiming for here is, first of all, on top of your finger with the head, again brush it like that so it curves over like that, and then whilst you've got it there, pull it up like that, and then get your other finger underneath and go down like that, so you've got sort of more of an S shape on the larger ones. The smaller ones are a bit more difficult to do, but you can see the difference between the small and the large. And as you can see on these that I've already done, I've started from a very small one up to much bigger ones. That's out of order, is that? That wants to go in there. Right, so that's your buds. So set all those aside to dry. Now I'm going to leave that for the time being, and I'm going to come on to the leaves first, and then I'll come back to the colouring part. So I've got some green paste. I only use one green paste, as I keep saying. You don't need a lot of different greens. There are lots of different greens in the paste, but you only need one. The one that I use is either Christmas green from Sugar Flare or Holly and Ivy from Squire's Kitchen. I don't know about other makes, but it's that sort of green. But you can put as much or as little in as you want to get whatever shade you want. Bearing in mind that the backs of leaves are lighter, so don't go too dark with your green. You can get loads of different greens in the powders because they are cheaper to buy. I use edible art ones, which are very reasonable. They're only, I think they're about £1.60 for a pot of plain colour, and they come in a pot that size, filled up, depending on what it is there is, and they do a massive range, and they do loads of different greens. So then you can pick from your powders what sort of green you want to dust it up to get it as dark or as light as you want. Right, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to roll a little bit of a sausage there with that. Get my rolling pin, roll that out. If you're going to cut a load of leaves out, like I use with my trusty little tool that I do for speed, but you can use the other side of this board with the groove side to do your leaves. Do a couple at a time if you're not fast at doing them like I am. Just do a couple at a time, small amounts of paste, and take your time doing it. Once you get faster at doing it, then you can use tools like this, and a lot of my students tend to progress onto this sort of thing. I'm just going to use one line up the middle, and this has got a groove in it there, so it leaves your ridge to put your wire into. Just be very careful when you're doing this. Now the cutters that I've used for doing the leaves here, I use for quite a few of this type of leaf. This is called a simple leaf cutter. It's not a specific leaf, it's just a simple leaf, but it's the shape that you want. I'm not going to use the largest one, so what I've done is I've used that one, and that one, and the smaller ones I've left out. They do come in loads of different sizes, so you can do any size of leaf that you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do two different shaped leaves. So I'll cut that one out. Make sure your ridge is up the centre of your cutter like that, and we'll do that one as well. When you're cutting your leaves out, because these got a slight curve on the top, make sure that they're always facing the same way. I've got these opposite ways, but it doesn't really matter for this because I'm not going to use them. I'm just doing this to show you how they're done. Make sure that when you're not using your paste, you cover it. That's why I like these. I buy these big kilo bags of flour paste because they've got a resealable top on, so you don't get the air in and dry your paste out. Right, so that's those cut out, and I've still got some green wires here left over of the 28. I would normally cut it in 4 for doing the leaves because they are going in a little bit further, but for this purpose it doesn't really matter. So into the bottom of your leaf and feel the wire go up the leaf so it doesn't show through the paste. Same with that one. You can use a smaller wire on this because it's a smaller leaf, so you can get away with that. Depends what size leaves you're doing. Unlike some people that get, all the professionals that get things given and that, they waste a lot of wires. Now I don't do that. I don't like cutting bits of wire off. If you don't need it, don't use it. So there we are. Right, so the next step I'm going to do now is we're going to thin the edges of the petal. Just take that off there for a minute. Just go around the edge of your leaves just to take the cut edge off. Now some people do this after they've put it in the verner. I can't see the point in that, and I'll show you why in a minute. Because you lose some of your verning, and what's the point in having a verner if you're going to lose some of the detail from the edge of it. Find where my verner is. There. Everything's under everything else. And for using the verner, this is a rose leaf verner that I'm using for this. The reason I put it onto the board rather than on the pad is because it's got a soft base underneath and you want a firm base. So you leaf in, make sure that you turn it over so that the ridge goes into the groove. Put your verner on top like that. Give it a good press. And there we are, there's your leaf. Shape it, and then that goes onto the foam at the side there, so we'll just bring that over so you can see where I put it in between the ridges so it gives it a bit of shape so it doesn't dry flat. So what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to show you what happens if you thin your edges afterwards. So into your verner again, on the top, give it a good press like that, and then what some people do, I'm not naming any names because I've seen quite a lot of people doing it, onto the pad, and then they go around the edge. Oops, lost some of my buds off of there. They go around the edge then and do the edge. Well, what happens is, you see there, you've got a plain edge round and your veining only comes that far out. So personally, I find it better to put that into the verner like I've shown you before. So I've put it back into the verner, press on it, and there you are. Your veining goes right up to the edge, same as it does on a normal leaf. So if any professionals are watching me and they have a habit of doing that, take note. Some of these things you learn by accident, doing things, and you think, well, why did I do that? That doesn't look right, you know. And this is how you learn. Everybody learns from the things that they do. So, right, colouring. Go back to the flowers now. Now I've got the colours out on here that I'm already using. Now what I've done here with the yellow, which I've used in the centre of the honeysuckle, I've used, because I couldn't find a lighter green yellow. I know I've got one somewhere, but I couldn't find it. So what I've done is, and if you're doing this at home and you don't have all the colours that I'm using, so there is a yellow called honeysuckle which is ideal for this sort of thing. This one I've used sunflower, and then what I've done then is I've mixed a white lustre in with it to make it a paler colour. And you could make that into a cream as well by putting more white in and less yellow, if you haven't got lots of different colours. So when you're buying your powder colours, if you just think about that, buying something to lighten colours that you've got, so that if you haven't got a wide range of in-between colours and hundreds of colours like I. Right everybody, back to the colouring. There's been a gap in my video because unfortunately something went wrong with my camera, so I'm having to redo it again for this part. So I've already started colouring some of these things before I realised what happened. But to do the leaves again, when you dust all over them, you'll find that if you haven't veined your leaves the way that I say, it shows up at the edge when you come to dusting and then varnishing your leaves, when the detail starts showing up on them. So I'm just going to varnish that leaf. And I've got my brush here somewhere for varnishing. Where have I put it? There. Oops. If you haven't got leaf varnish, then you will need to steam your leaves and then let them dry, and then steam them and let them dry 2 or 3 times before you get to the shine you want. Depending on how you want your leaves, it will build up, but it just takes time. Having the varnish does make life an awful lot simpler. And you'll find if you buy the larger sizes like this I've got here, this is a Squire's Kitchen one, it's cheaper to buy it this way than it is those little tiny bottles, which probably might be alright for you because they'll last a long time, but it is a lot cheaper to buy the larger bottles. And make sure, whoops, that when you've done your varnishing, that you clean your brush. I keep some isopropyl in another bottle just for cleaning the brushes, just to get the varnish out. Otherwise your brushes will be no good and you end up having to throw them away. Right, back to the flowers, and with this one, as I say, I've mixed the yellow, sunflower yellow, with the silver snow to make a lighter colour, to dust the inside of the flowers. I'm using the one that I pulled the flower because I've already done my others with having the problem with my camera. So that's the centre, and then you go on to the outside of the flower, and we're going to dust that with the blackcurrant. But don't dust right down to the base of your flower, leave a little bit of white down here because we're going to dust that with a bit of green. As I say, I'm just being a bit gentle with these because these haven't dried totally, so tend to move around a little bit more. And just be very careful when you come to this tail bit here when you're dusting it. When you've done that, then go into your green again and just give it a little bit of a waft around the base there on your flowers. And then do the same thing with buds. Doesn't matter which way around you do, whether you do the green first or you do the red first, because so we've got that on there, and then all over your buds with that. You usually only have to do one side and then turn it over and do the other side, because your brush bristles will spread all the way around your buds, so you can leave them flat on the paper. And then when you've done that, if you just check, I just need a bit more colour on my brush. Better. Oops. Just check around the bud just to make sure if you haven't missed anything. There we are. And where's the other one? There. Right, so once those are done, everything's coloured, then the next part of the process then is to start putting everything together. Just get rid of that out of the way. And I've got all my buds there. Got my flowers. And I've got all my leaves there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taping the leaves onto, I've got 24 gauge wire here. Sometimes I use a stronger wire, it depends what I'm doing really as to which I use, but I'm going to start off by putting in the small leaves first of all. You want 2 small leaves right at the very top. Bent the wires back so that the leaves go in like that, so you can see there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust my camera so you can see what I'm doing, because I have a habit of going out of shot when I'm doing this. So there we are, so you should be able to see what I'm doing now. So I'm going to go down about an inch, then put in another 2 leaves, this time going the opposite way to the other ones. Doesn't matter if they move around, because you can sort this out once you've got all your bits and pieces taped in. You can move things around and get them just as you want them, so don't worry if they're not exactly right. You can come back and adjust them while you're doing it if you want, you know. Up to you. It depends on how you work. Everybody works differently. So I put another set of leaves in. I've gone a size larger this time. So these are the medium sized leaves. And they're all in pairs of the leaves on these, so one facing the other. As I say, if you've got a plant in the garden, or look online, you can Google it. If you just put in the name of the flower and that, lots of pictures come up. And just pull your wires down just to make sure everything's in nice and tight, so they're not going to move around. So I get complaints from my students. Things are moving around, it won't stay still. Why is it doing that? Why is it floppy? It's because you're not pulling your wires down, that's why. So you need to make sure you pull them in tight in order to get things to stay where you want them to stay. Just get hold of all your wires and just give them a little bit of a pull to make sure they're in nice and tight. If your tape starts twisting round like that, just get it back round, and because when you've stretched it, it does have a tendency to curl. So just try and keep your, so you're pulling with this hand and turning with the other hand, so this stretches and that releases the glue, and as it sticks to itself as you twist it round. If I haven't explained that before, I'm explaining it now. Tape down now. I've got all the, oh no, I've got 2 more medium ones to go in, have I? No, I haven't. My larger ones there. Right. Now where I am now, lost myself for a minute there. I'm just going to paste myself down because I'm going to put the flowers in after this. I'm just going to leave that for the time being. Put that to one side. And then I'm going to come back to the flowers. I need some more tape. So we'll cut some more tape. Use my trusty little machine. My tape cutter. Saves an awful lot of time when I get into it. There we are. just basic ordinary razor blades in it, inside like that. And I've taken 2 of them out because they come with 3 razor blades in, and then you've got 4 sides for your razor blades. So when they start getting blunt, you just undo your cutter, take your razor blades out, turn them round so you've got another end, and then when that's got blunt, then you take the razor blades out, turn them over completely, and you've got 2 more sides. So you've got 4 sides to each razor blade. Just the old-fashioned razor blades that we used to use before we had all these fancy things that we've got now. Oops. I've already laid all my buds out in order, the way that I want them to go. So stretch your tape to start off with. Find out which is the stickiest side. That's stickier on that side. So we start that off underneath your first bud, like that. Nip it in with your nail and twist. Then you start feeding your other buds in. I keep forgetting to look up at my screen to see if I'm looking in the right direction. This is where I've gone wrong in some of my other videos, that I haven't looked at my screen, because it's very difficult to look at the screen having no camera person and look at what you're doing, which is what I'm doing now. And just keep feeding your buds in. They'll move around a bit, so wait until you've got a load of buds in before you start adjusting where they go. If you've already laid them out in sizes, then they'll more or less fall into position as you put them in. Keeping that tape underneath the base of your buds. You can see when you get your first 2 buds in that it's starting to take shape now. Making sure that the snake's head is pointing inwards. I once did this when I entered competition at the NEC for the cake decoration magazine, and I spent a lot of time studying the honeysuckle in my garden to make sure that I got everything right, because the stamens in it, I don't know whether I mentioned it before, are not the same as the stamens that I've put in this. They are actually a T-bar shape. If you look at a picture of the flower up close, you'll see what I mean. And I made the stamens by using cotton, spraying a load of extra strength hair lacquer into a saucer, running the cotton through it, let it dry so it stiffens up, and then cut little pieces off to make a T-bar on the end of longer pieces to make the stamens. That's how I did it. And there were other people that had done honeysuckle at the same competition, but I was the only one that was botanically correct for my stamens that year. And I got highly commended for that, which I was quite happy with. Was it highly commended, or did I get a silver? I can't remember now. It's quite a few years ago. I know I got quite a good award for it anyway, so you just space them out just to see where they are when you're putting all your bits and pieces together. There we are, that's the last of the buds into the spray, so next job now is to put in the flowers. Just have to be very careful that you don't knock that back part of the flower off when you're doing this. As you can see, I've already knocked one off on that one. Just going to move those up a little bit until I've got the rest of it done, and then tape down. Right, once we've got those taped down, then we can put that in with the leaves. So with my surgical clamps, I'm going to bend the flowers up a bit like that, so I've got a bend on so that I can lay that onto the wire there. And then I can put the large leaves in that we've already got there. Tape down a bit, then put the other pair of leaves in. Once you've got everything together, then you can adjust any pieces that are out of sync with the rest, the way that you want them to be. And tape down to the bottom. Open it all out. Now if you wanted to and you had another spray, you could actually join those two together and add the other spraying lower down to make two. So what you would do with that then is to bend that wire down like that and then tape in from there to make it into a double spray. So it just depends on how big you want your spray to be, really. But there we are. That's my take on honeysuckle. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Haven't decided what I'm going to do yet, but like I said before, if anybody's got any suggestions about what you would like to see, or any comments about anything that I've done in the video, any of the products, any of the tools, or any other questions that you've got about Sugarcraft, then please do get in touch. That's what the comment section is for. And again, if you subscribe to my channel, the more people that subscribe, the more that I can do. And hope to see you in the next video. So take care and stay safe.